Getting the right look for your title or any text can be really tough, but recently Adobe and Red Giant have made that a lot easier. So today we're taking a look at a few ways to get better text for your project. Welcome to Film Riot, the show that takes mystery out of the effects and techniques, going to some of your favorite Hollywood films. I'm your host, Ryan Conley, and whether you're working on a main title, lower third, info overlay, or any other kind of text, getting something that not only looks quality but fits your project can be really difficult when first starting out. So before we jump into Adobe and Red Giant goods, let's take a look at some basic starting concepts that dial in a solid and professional look to your text. First up is choosing the typeface that you want to use, which of course is just the style of font. For this, you want to make sure that you're not only matching the tone of your project, but that it fits the context as well. For instance, if you have something that takes place in the 50s and it's a gritty, violent film, something in the style of 7 would fit the tone, but it wouldn't necessarily fit the context, since the choice of that font may not make sense for the period your piece takes place in. And this, just like every tip that we're going to give here, is not a hard and fast rule. These are just concepts to get you thinking deeper about your work. The 7 approach could potentially work great for your project, but if you're thinking in all of these terms, you're going to make sure of it. Once you have your font choice, you start your layout. And with this and every other choice that you make, you're still keeping in mind the idea of tone and context. But the general idea here is to create contrast with your text. The last thing that you want is something that is blending in and unreadable. First up is color. Of course, all the same rules that you find in all of design apply here. A great tool for help on this is Adobe Color Wheel, which you can find at this link. You add the color that you want to use, and color will give you plenty of possible starting points from different rules like analogous, monochromatic, triad, complementary, compound, and so on. Again, not something that you need to stick to, but a good starting point. Another way to create contrast is with size. Of course, when selecting your size, you need to keep readability in mind, realizing that a lot of people are likely going to be viewing this on a mobile device. But size also brings the idea of purpose. If you have a few lines of font, the size difference will directly relate to the importance of that line. For instance, with our Westworld to Yuma title, the presents line is much smaller than the film's title line. Another way to create contrast and a different feel between your text lines is by using different but complementary typefaces. Just keep the general rule of 3s here in mind, which just says that you want to keep it to 3 different font types or less. More than that starts to feel a bit messy, but again, rules can and should be broken, just a nice guideline to keep in mind. Finally, we have spacing. All of this is going to adjust readability and tone. You have leading, which is the vertical position where your letters sit and that vertical space between your letters. Then kerning, which is the spacing between individual letters, and tracking, which is the spacing between multiple letters. For instance, with the font that we have been using for Film Riot Mondays, which is called Laser 88, it's a great font, but the individual letters can blend oddly with each other. So after adjusting our tracking to get a place that we're happy with, I have to come in and adjust the kerning between the individual letters to get everything to look how I want and be nice and readable. For where we get fonts, really you could just Google it. If you're looking for an Indiana Jones type font, just Google free Indiana Jones font. You'll find a ton of stuff. But the 2 main places that we get our fonts from is Google Fonts and Adobe Typekit, which comes with CC. But again, you can easily just Google and find whatever you need that works best for you. But those are the basic starter ideas to keep in mind to get you on the right track. Of course, if you're placing your text over an image, all the same rules are going to apply. What is the color and brightness of that image that you're placing your text on? That is your starting point, and to start implementing these rules. And honestly, often I'm just going off of how something feels to me more than anything else. With our more recent title cards for Film Riot Monday, I decided to go with a very minimal style with no movement, just straight cuts. That and the color weren't based on any rules that I was consciously thinking about. They just felt right while toying around with the ideas. So again, although these rules are great things to keep in mind and dive in to learn more and understand, you can always throw them out and just go with your gut. If you're a budding filmmaker, entrepreneur, innovator, Domain.com is the place to go when that next idea hits you. When you get a domain name from Domain.com, you're taking the first steps in creating an identity and vision for your brand or idea. And the world's top 2 premier and most recognized domain name extensions are .com and .net, which means those are the ones that are going to help you build your brand and expand your presence online the best. Of course, Domain.com is reliable, affordable, and easy to use, but they're giving you some love by giving you 25% off their already affordable prices when you get domain names, web hosting, and email. Just use the coupon code FilmRiot at Domain.com's checkout, and when you think domain names, think Domain.com.
Logo.
Jumping back in with some Adobe Goodness, Dynamic Link has given us a much easier way to deal with animated text and such from After Effects right inside of Premiere. Like for instance, this squiggly text that we use from time to time like this is just an After Effects file that I had Stark set up. So I can bring that into Premiere and select the comp that I need, then change the text right inside of Premiere, which is a much more simple and time-saving way to work. But now we have the Essential Graphics panel. With the new update, you can now grab the text tool and type right on the program monitor like you do in After Effects. Then then come into Essential Graphics and tweak all our parameters. This was a much needed update. Dealing with text in that extra title window was definitely restricting, but back in here you have all the basic functions you'd expect, and you can also go over to Browse and you'll find a bunch of templates that you can use as a starting point for whatever you need. Like some end credits, which are pre-made trailer style credits, which you can come in and customize however you want. And we have a few options for end credits like this, or we can grab some pre-made lower thirds like this one here, which is one of the more designed out versions. If we go into Essential Graphics, you can see, of course, we can change the text, but we can also change the animation speed and angle of the grid in the animation and change all of our colors around. In that same video game folder, you have some other options like intros and even a transition, all customizable in the same way. Then you have more simple options with built-in animations, which once you've clicked on one of these and you go to Effects panel, you can see what has been done to make this template work. Then you can turn things on or off, adjust them, or reverse engineer it to create your own. You can also create some more complex custom options in After Effects and bring it into Premiere in the same way. That's not something that I'll do often for one-off projects, but for things that are reoccurring, like our shows Film Riot and Variant, where we're doing multiple episodes a week and always needing to adjust similar assets, this is incredibly helpful. Moving on to some Red Giant goodies. I talked about it before briefly, but in the new universe update, they added 6 really great plugins for text. First of which, AV Club. This gives your text an old VHS look. It's cool, but not something that I see myself getting a ton of mileage out of because of how specific it is. Then there's Ecto. This one has a very cool 80s horror / sci-fi sort of vibe to it. You can open up the presets to get a good starting point and then jump into the parameters to really make something unique. Then we have Long Shadow, which is something that we do a lot stylistically, but always have to do it manually, so this is a very welcome addition. Then you have Luster, which slaps on a metal or glass sort of gloss style to your text. Then once you have that, you can slap on the other one, Glow-Fi 2, which gives you animated glow effects, and you can easily have a solid looking title. They also have Title Motion. This gives you built-in motion ins and outs for your text, which is really useful when operating only in Premiere, since motion can be difficult to pull off in Premiere. But there you have it, a handful of ideas and tools to help you get quality title treatments more easily. As always, links in the notes below for everything that we talked about today, and I'll see you next week when I become a great pitcher after I break my arm.